this game. You gotta have that dog. Desire. That hunger. That non-stop will to win.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, let's get going, huh? Let's go, gather up. Come on now. All right, fellas, you gotta remember your body is like day-old rice. If it ain't warmed up properly, something real bad can happen, yeah?
Athletes, take your mark. Get set. It's time for the Addict II Athlete podcast. Everybody out there, Coach Blue Robinson here. Hey, thanks so much for downloading, sharing, and subscribing to the podcast. Greatly appreciate you guys doing so. As always, jump on to addicttwoathlete.org. You'll find all of our backlog podcasts, information about addiction recovery, team support, how this team called Addict II Athlete operates, and how to become a certified recovery coach. Maybe open a chapter of Addict II Athlete in your community. You can also jump on there under our events tab and register for the No One Left Behind Team Half Marathon. This is going to be an amazing experience. What a great event. Our medals just came in, brand new logo, brand new medals, new t-shirts, all the good stuff, and fully stocked with the aid stations. I think we got a lot of praise last year for our aid stations. It is in beautiful Spanish Fork, Utah. This is a team event where you start together and you finish together. So let's just say that you're, maybe new to the half marathon experience, maybe the distance. Grab a couple of your friends, get it done, and it doesn't matter what time. There is no time limits. You start together, you finish together. Just like in addiction recovery, mental health awareness, no one finishes alone. It takes a team, it takes a village. Come out here and show your experiences to those who maybe have less experience running and achieve some goals that you might not thought you had in you. Addicttwoathlete.org under the events tab, races and events. Well, athletes, I'm going to be flying solo today, and there's a reason why I wanted to jump in here and maybe share a little bit of some situational stuff that's been happening with old Coach Blue here and how I felt over the last, I'd say 2 weeks, which has been quite a roller coaster. Typically, I save this kind of podcast for the Patreon, subscribers. And if you want to become a Patreon subscriber, jump on patreon.com/addicttoathlete. But the reason why I want to go a little bit in depth is because I had a little interesting situation that happened last weekend. As we're talking about one of the last weekends here in May. Man, oh man, did life throw me a curveball. It's one of these things where you don't realize the magnitude of maybe something you're going through until you're on the other side of it. Now, granted, it's not comparable to some other situations people got themselves in, but I've had a lot of time to reflect and a little bit of time to thank, I guess, the circles of friends and acquaintances that I've come to know over the years, the team support, the family support, the community support, how, although I am a man, believe it or not, who really tries to stay under the radar, I don't like a lot of recognition. I don't like a lot of praise. When my birthday rolls around, I'm the kind of guy that wishes no one would kind of notice. I'm sure there's a few of you out there like that. So whenever something happens to me, I really try to take the gracious, low profile mode. And I know that's not always the right thing to do, but it got me thinking how thankful I am that there are people out there that inquire. And what I mean by that is in addiction, we do our best to hide. And a lot of times it's because obviously if light or eyes are cast upon us, then we're going to get figured out. Well, that same thing holds true to situational issues that may require us to, dare we say, ask for help. This is one of the most strenuous issues I've worked with in my own life, with people in recovery, in my private practice and therapy. People have a real hard time asking for help, and I'm no different. I mean, I'm the kind of guy, right, obviously, that you call if you need help. There's a lot of emotions that are tied up in that. Now, depending on how long you've been part of Team Addict II Athlete or been listening to these podcasts, you may have heard me talk about from time to time the 3 things that everyone needs. Even us who don't like asking for help, there are 3 things that all of us in humanity really, truly need. The first one is to be seen. We as human beings need to be seen. And when you think about that, you think about the significance behind how much we ignore, how much time we take to overlook people, situations, things. And it brings me to like what my teammate Brock Bevel's doing down in Arizona with his fentanyl project and the outreach he's doing with his community. To be seen means that you are being witnessed, you're being looked at, you're being, I guess, viewed upon, meaning that there are acquaintances, friendships, and relationships that we build in this little experience called life. And how important is it that we're seen? There are family systems, believe it or not, you guys, by which families don't see one another. They're aware of the existence. They know they have children. They know that they have a spouse. But how often do we stop just to see, to watch? Now, you've probably heard this in the old Avatar movie, right? With those blue guys flying around on these crazy dragon things. And one of the concepts they say in their little dialect is, I see you. There is some true value and importance in being seen. So many times we're overlooked. I've been aware of so many people that have come in to receive therapy that just are in this concept of mind that they don't belong, that they're not a part of, that they seem like they're on the outside looking in. And to not be seen, I think, is probably one of the most devastating things that can happen to us as humans. As a child, I wasn't seen, meaning like I was, made aware of by other people, obviously, but my needs were neglected. My emotions were neglected because of others, I guess, desires and pursuits and what they were wanting, specifically with my mom. And I remember when I used to get sick as a kid, that it was one of these principles of fend for yourself. Although I had an amazing sibling, my oldest sister, who I think took upon herself the motherly role, there were a lot of situations by which, she could only do so much because of her limited capacity. But the individual who I thought should have been able to see me and to take care of me, just didn't. Or at times when it was a little bit of investment was done kind of, haphazardly. It's kind of like as a annoyance rather than a pursuit of, I want to help fix the situation you're in. And so I remember when I got married to Marissa, our athletic director, one of the first things that truly humbled me was one day early in our marriage where I started getting this bizarre little pain in my back. And I'm like, what is this? And it grew and grew. And I got up that night and I was walking around our little apartment in Payson as we were, living in an apartment just below her parents in her house. And I'm doing this pacing, walking back and forth all night. And she gets up. She's like, what is wrong? I'm like, I don't know. I think I need to go to the hospital. So we go to the hospital. Sure enough, I entered this new era of life called kidney stones. And I remember being like completely blown away that Marissa was so intrigued to help, she was so willing to I'm going to say serve out of her inconvenience. And every time I would get sick, with a flu or something, and it's not that common or that, it doesn't happen that often. I was always kind of amazed that she would want to get close and help and serve, because I was just the opposite. We were raised that if you are sick, everyone stays away from that person. It's almost like you become a leper, which is not a good method when you're building relationships. And so to be seen means that you're not only, being, someone else is aware of you, but you're also being understood for, who you are, what's going on. Now, the second thing is that, a quality that we all need, other than, being seen, is to be heard, which means that our voice matters, that the language we use, the terms we use, the content we experience to dialect with one another, that there's value placed in there, that you're listening. One of the most amazing attributes I think anyone can have is an ability to listen. And this is something truly that I've had to develop over my career and my life, is to not try and solve the issue or to think how to fill in the next, communicational gap with whatever wisdom I think the individual needs to hear, but rather to just listen. A mentor of mine, his name's Davey, he taught me this principle, and he was a very good listener. And it didn't matter if you had something, dumb to say, or if you had some kind of earth-shattering, aha moment. The listening style was the same. It was, quiet until obviously the conversation had finished, and it was very little interjection, if any, and it was sound response. But the coolest part about it was you felt heard, you felt listened to. And there's a big, I think, component to a relationship when you are seen and when you are heard. And so for me, again, trying to express that there are, medical issues going on with this kidney stone that I've been going through, and for Marissa to see me, but then to hear me, the final attribute that all humans need is to be understood, to be able to see, to hear, and then to understand what's going on. Because understanding is one of these principles in a relationship that truly needs to be cultivated. Because although we can listen and maybe even hear people, if we don't understand the emotional complexities, the mental complexities, maybe the heart of what the issue truly is, then we're going to, maybe shoot from the hip, and we're going to guess when we should be gathering more information. A lot of men get in the situation by which they want to solve the problem, and so they see, they hear, and then they respond. But to truly be understood is a beautiful thing. So as a foundational layer of what I'm even going to be discussing today, I think that needed to be clarified so that you could understand where I'm coming from and why it's so important that we let people in. Specifically, this last week, probably starting last Monday, I was, starting to experience some abdominal pain. No big deal. I've got the world's worst digestive system. I kid you not, like heartburn since I was, like early teens. All kinds of stuff. A lot of the things I've understood and come to know is that a significant amount of my digestional issues, my stomach problems, come from the emotional turbulence experienced as a child. It seems kind of interesting that the more traumatic experiences, the more trauma, the more abuse that we suffer as children, the physiological aspects and results of such interactions with primary caregivers or whatnot, they do wreak havoc on a physiological level within ourselves. We store a lot of this stuff inside, not knowing the complexities behind it. We think that trauma and addiction and all the stuff we go through is a mental health issue. And although it holds great space in our minds and in our hearts, our bodies feel the wrath of not processing it. We see people that suffer from, indigestion, from heartburn, from stomach problems. The stress hormone cortisol, which is the byproduct of stress, right? It stores in our bodies. And this is the beautiful thing about EMDR therapy is that there's a part of EMDR therapy by which we can understand and target that in the body. And while you're processing this, you can actually physically feel where your cortisol is being stored, and you can feel it move. Now, it seems kind of hokey, but I'm telling you, it's very much correlated. And so for me, a lot of my, trauma and abuse, it went right down into my gut, right? I felt it in my stomach, right? You talk about, I've got a pit in my stomach or whatnot. That is where your cortisol, resides. And so for me, having, some, basic heartburn, some gas pains, some indigestion, all that kind of stuff, I always believed and felt that it was a result of diet, poor eating, as I got older and more, experienced in mental health and the physiological aspects of what addiction does, about what trauma does, I started to understand the complexities about where this stuff lives. And so some of the things physically you're experiencing can be kind of, I think, golden threaded back to some of the trauma we experienced. And so, this last week when I started having these issues, I'm like, well, it's, there's a lot going on. We've got our race coming up. We've got graduation for my daughter. We've got, these grants that we need to get in. I have my full private therapy sessions. I got Addict II Athlete. I've got church callings. I have all the typical stress that anyone has, with limited resources and, the hours of a day. And so I thought, well, it's pretty much on point. Of course, we're going to feel some of this, and this too shall pass, right? Well, it didn't. It got significantly worse and worse, and these gas pains and these things I thought I was experiencing, this lower abdomen pain was getting more and more intense until, we figured out what was going on. But for me, I was positioning myself to also help out with a local event. It's called the Timp Trails Marathon and Half Marathon that we're asked to help out quite a bit. One aspect, as you all know, of Addict II Athlete is the service part. Service is what really makes this team tick. It's what makes Addict II Athlete stand out, is that although we do a lot of recreation, we do a ton of service. And that is a huge part of recovery, giving back to the communities that we once took from. And so something as simple as, backpacking and hiking up, aid station supplies, food for the runners, man, we welcome that kind of stuff because it shows the community at large, that we do want to give back. And service, when you're doing it in a capacity of a race or an event like an aid station, it is such a cool thing because you get the accolades from the athletes that come in, and they know how hard it was maybe to hike stuff up to Indian Springs or hike stuff up to Windy Pass with John Bozon's events. And so Team Addict II Athlete is typically asked to do these kind of things on a regular basis because they know we'll show up, we'll get the job done. And so the Friday before all these problems, I ran up to Indian Springs. It's a 3-mile hike from the trailhead. Beautiful hike. I mean, gorgeous conditions right now. Waterfalls flowing well. I got up there. There was a little bit of snow around. Saw the water source was coming out good because Indian Springs is a great place. You don't have to carry any water because it comes directly out of a natural spring. And so, I had gathered 4 or 5 other guys to come up and help, and went over that Thursday and then got all the supplies ready for Friday to hike up there and camp overnight. I had my son and his buddy and a couple of other guys that were willing to come up and hike, and a good buddy of mine, Paul Whipple, and I guess his brother were planning on coming. There's a lot of neat people that were going to do this. So I went over to Sean Christensen's place, got all the supplies, and then Thursday night into Friday. And oh, Lord have mercy. The pain that I was experiencing was off the charts. And I'm the kind of guy who's like, walk it off, and I knew it was gas pains. Obviously, I'd had these things forever. So I thought, man, my diet's getting out of whack because I'm in this, stress mode. So I'm not eating correctly. If you guys didn't know, I've been, doing some diet changes. I've lost, pretty good amount of weight. And so I was like, what is going on? Suffered that whole night. It was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. Sent Marissa to the store at like 3 a.m. to go get some over-the-counter medications because I was sure I knew what it was, right? Dr. Blue here. And none of that took it away. That morning I woke up, Marissa woke up, and I'm like, same thing as that kidney stone. I'm like, we got to go to the hospital. So she takes me in. It was, every bump on the way to this hospital, man, you guys, it felt like I was getting kicked in the abdomen. I'm telling you, I'm like, what is going on? We get there, they check me in, they put this decrepit little old body on this little stretcher, gurney, and they roll me around and, go get the CT scan, which I've never done before. What a crazy experience to have a CT scan. Anyone that's done that, the doctor said something crazy to me. He's all, so when you get a CT scan, he's like, you're going to feel some pressure and maybe some burning or whatnot in your eyes and in your throat. Oh, and then you'll feel like you're urinating. And he's like, but don't worry, you're not. And I thought, that is really weird. Okay. Didn't think it would happen. Sure enough, man, the craziest thing, it feels like someone's choking you, and then it feels like you're peeing your pants. It's the craziest thing. I don't get it, but I was happy because about 15, 20 minutes later, they come back and they're like, hey, looks like your appendix is about ready to pop. We got to pull this sucker out. So I'm like, wait a minute, it's not just gas pains. I'm like, that's kind of good because you don't want to go in there and like, here, take some Gas X and go home and do your business. But that meant immediate surgery. Now this is like, 6 a.m., 7 a.m. in the morning, and I'm supposed to be hiking up in a few hours to do this aid station stuff that I'd committed to. I have all the supplies in my Suburban, and I'm like, crap, So now Coach Blue's got to not only ask for help from his wife, but also now from the community. And man, praises to athletic director Marissa. She took that by the reins, contacted Sean and Joe, who we just had on the podcast, and kind of explained to them the situation. And I felt super bad, but I'm like, there's nothing I could do. A few hours later, they are taking me back and cutting this puppy out. And now it feels like a few days later that I've had, like the world's strongest competition of stomach crunches. I mean, even now here it's a Tuesday, I'm still feeling a little bit sore, but nothing compared to the pain I was experiencing. And what a crazy thing, the appendix, something we don't even need that can cause that much problem. But nonetheless, surgery went well, everything went great. But then I started getting the curiosity calls. I started getting the how you doing, coach calls. And again, I'm the kind of guy that wants to kind of stay under the radar with some of this stuff. I don't mind posting some things that I've noticed or experienced, but when it comes to stuff like this, I just think like, you guys have better things to worry about than me. And I know a lot of us think that way, but I started getting, text messages and emails and, some inquiry about how you doing, coach? How's everything happening? And for the first time in a long time, I just let it happen. And I have to tell you, the reason why I'm even recording this podcast today is because of how good it felt. And not that I beg for that attention. I think you guys have probably established that by now, but I got thinking, how lucky am I that I'm surrounded by people who care? And I think maybe that's where it's a little bit different for me, is that growing up, you're used to people not caring. And I'm supposed to be the guy that cares, right? I'm the therapist, I'm the husband, I'm the coach, I'm the father, I'm the ecclesiastical leader, I'm all these things, and I'm not used to people caring about me. And as hard as it was to allow, I guess, people in, I was so thankful that there are so many that did. It got me thinking, how often are we surrounded by people, by family, by friends that just don't get that? That just don't get the concepts of being seen, of being heard, or being understood. Obviously, letting some people down is one of my worst nightmares. It's like, I'd rather go without than let someone down. That people-pleasing pursuit is a direct correlation to trauma suffered as a kid. That's just what we do, right? We try to make everyone feel okay because we ourselves haven't. And so it got me thinking about how important it is for us to have these people in our lives that can have some kind of affirmation of existence, to be able to say, we see you. So many of our friends, of our acquaintances, of our teammates, they don't get a lot of that kind of stuff. It's an important aspect of life to have an outside investment that is based off emotional and mental well-being. Getting noticed and being seen is so important in this life. It enhances self-esteem and confidence. It validates, the personal and professional efforts that we put ourselves in. It encourages continued growth and improvement. It builds social and professional networks. It increases opportunities for collaboration and advancements in relationships. And I get thinking about those inside aspects, those people that know us, that are truly asking because they care, is an interesting concept. These outside investments, people that are kind of on the outside looking in, they provide resources. I had people call, ask me if I needed this and needed that. Again, we were able to offer the opportunity to go help with that aid station to a few other people. And I'm so thankful that Sean and everybody kind of understood that this wasn't, I'm trying to get out of a situation, which I think most of us go to when we can't do something, when we call in sick or we have these problems, is the first thing we think of is, what if they think less of me? What if they don't see what I'm doing? What if they don't believe me, right? And I think that when we get into that mindset, we forget about the track record that we've already established. Of course, no one's going to be like, oh, well, that liar, let me see the receipts. Let me see the scars. Come on. But that's just what happens in our minds. These outside perspectives, right? It kind of validates our willingness to serve in a way. It opens doors and it impacts us on a mental level. It promotes a sense of accomplishment and purpose because they know who we are. They're like, we see what you're doing now. Thanks for getting us this far. We'll take it from here. And I think it was, a question I had as I was preparing for this little, podcast here, is why is it so important as us for humans to be seen, to be heard, and to be understood? This is a big deal. And I want to take just a little bit of time and talk about the emotional connections. This kind of investment, it fosters a deeper relationship and a sense of belonging, which is essential for emotional well-being. To be in a situation by which you're seen, heard, and understood, it makes you feel as though obviously you belong. And so many times, you guys, we'll see people and we'll make up experiences or excuses as to why not invest, whether it be a homeless person. And again, you don't have to give them money or whatnot, but just, communication, just, I see you, just, whatever you at the moment believe or feel you can do. It fosters this deep relationship and sense of belonging, which is so essential for the mental well-being. it makes you feel as though there's something bigger out there. And so when people come up to me and have, responded like, hey, I saw Marissa's text, or we heard this, we heard that, instead of saying, oh yeah, it was no big deal, I'm honest with them. I'm like, yeah, dude, it hurt. It was scary. It's crazy. It happened fast. Thank you so much for asking. This was my experience, because who knows, man? What I didn't realize is that the bouncing and the potholes we were hitting on the way to the ER should have been like a bell being rung of like, it's your appendix, because apparently when that gets inflamed or ready to burst, any kind of sudden jostle or movement makes you cramp down in those bowels of yours. And so for me, being able to talk a little bit about it helps somebody else, right? Don't keep it anonymous. The self-esteem and confidence that I think is established when we let people in, it's a ability to have some recognition and some appreciation that does foster a sense of self-worth and confidence, and encourages us all, myself included, to face challenges, because we know we're not alone. I used to say this. I used to talk about my trauma threshold. My trauma threshold would be losing one of my children, to accident or to death or whatnot. And unfortunately, I've known now, since that has been my trauma threshold, that what I thought could bring me to the knees and the edge of my recovery. I've met people that have experienced that. And one of my neighbors is just discussing and posting about the 2-year anniversary of losing their daughter to gun violence. And they've experienced my trauma threshold, and they're still here. And so when we talk about, the ability to let people in, to be seen, heard, and understood, it does foster and bolster this appreciation of worth and confidence, and encourages us that we can face challenges because we're not alone. If we try to do this stuff alone, can you imagine the uphill battle this is going to be? It really does maximize mental health when you let people in. Feeling valued, it kind of reduces the feeling of being isolated and alone. And it's critical for maintaining good mental health. Now, what I've noticed is that most of us who try to put out there that we don't want the attention or we don't want the inquiry, we truly do. A lot of us don't believe we deserve it. And so a lot of people try to play that card pretty close to their heart by saying, stay away, get off my lawn, the Ebenezer Scrooge type mentality. That's not the case. I think a lot of that happens is because we didn't receive it, and so we don't know how, to bring it on board. I think I've talked about this till I'm literally figuratively blue in the face. One time, a colleague of mine that I just admired was giving me some recognition for something I'd done, and I tried to discount that by saying it wasn't a big deal, and she immediately stopped me and said, "How dare you?" And I'm like, "What?" She's like, "Do not, discount a compliment that I'm giving you. Do you think I'm giving that to you to boost your own ego?" She's like, "When someone compliments you, all you have to say is thank you." And I always thought you needed to say thank you, but with a very meek and mild response, and maybe downplay your efforts because you didn't want to boast your talents. And that's garbage. And she taught me that. And so, to be able to understand that we're not alone and to let people in, it's going to take a little bit of time. But that's something that I felt by so many people reaching out and being like, hey, I heard this. And again, I felt like maybe some of the people that were reaching out, I thought, man, all I had was an appendix removed. It wasn't like I was having some kind of major surgery, but I had to let all that stuff go and say people care because they care. Just accept that. What I did notice too, is that beyond the good mental health, right, is that it does kind of bring the sense of identity and purpose. Being seen and being heard helps us kind of define our identity and find purpose and contribute more to a fulfilling life. Because what it makes me do is foster that sense of gratitude that I've established, a connection and a network of people that care. It's what we promote. It's what we're teaching. So how funny would it be that I'm talking about on Team Addict II Athlete, we have this team approach. We have this team effort. It takes a village, all these things. And then me, myself, reject it when the team tries to step up to support me. That is what would be the most dumb thing I could do. I've fostered this thought for so many years, right? Who heals the healer? And, it's an aspect that I've come to understand is it's you guys. It's this team. This team you help me. You help me more than you guys probably know, and probably more than I give you credit for. And so when situations arise like this, it's not only like, words of affirmation and accolades and concern. It's also your actions. It's also your willingness to step up. And for those that did rise to the occasion and come out and help serve and fulfill that responsibility that I got us in, the Indian Springs aid station. I want to thank you for doing that, because it was ultimately my responsibility, but that meant that it was also your responsibility, and you took that graciously. And I can't thank you all enough. And I think that that's what makes this team so special. So who would I be if I'm teaching team support, team unity, and I'm the first one to push it away? So then how is it done? Because again, it may seem super foreign. If the primary foundation is to be seen, to be heard, and to be understood, how do you start allowing that to happen? Acknowledging your feelings is so crucial in this arena. To be able to recognize and accept your own emotions to better understand what you need from others is key. Because sometimes all you need is just that contribution of understanding. Like, I see that you're having an issue with this. Can I help you with that? And allowing it. Sometimes it's, just being able to thank someone for spending a little bit of time to inquire how you're doing, but to acknowledge why you feel a certain way, apprehensive, grateful, unsure. Those feelings are those defense mechanisms that we've adopted to kind of stay at a distance, because if people contribute, what do they want from us, right? And so acknowledging where that's coming from is crucial, I think. To be able to communicate openly and share your thoughts and feelings honestly with those who care about you is so important. That means don't downplay the situation. Well, a lot of people have asked me, especially like the day after Friday, Saturday, Sunday, how you doing, coach? How you feeling? It'd be super easy for me to say, oh, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for asking. When in actuality, I'm like, dude, this is really hard. It's hard to move. It kind of hurts. And obviously you don't want to pull the victim card, but sometimes the reason why they're asking is because they want to know. And so not downplaying your situation and being honest with that communication is key. And you can do that in a manner by which you don't come across as, feeling as though you're this, moping Myrtle, but really kind of like being honest with what's going on. Because after all, that's why they're asking. Oh man, I'm about at 85%, it still feels like I got kicked in the stomach by a horse, but, I don't think I'm going to win any stomach crunching contests coming up, but, overall, better than the day I went in. Those kind of things, right? Being able to practice vulnerability in these kind of situations are so crucial. And this, I think, is where it gets a lot of us stuck. To allow yourself to be open and vulnerable, even if it feels uncomfortable at first, is super important, because the vulnerability concept of this might have got us into a speck of trouble in the past. Maybe we were too open, maybe we were too vulnerable, and there are people out there that will take advantage of that. And I think that those that take advantage of someone when they're in a vulnerable state, those guys, belong on the bench. They don't get to play, I think. But practicing that by letting people in is crucial. It doesn't have to be the mass of the majority at first, but letting one or two get a little bit closer just to, test the waters, but also to see like their best interest in you is to, serve you out of their inconvenience. And that helps build trust on a gradual aspect, because establishing trust over time and sharing, small personal details and observing reactions are super important. You don't have to be the dam breaking, bursting, and here's all the information at first. Maybe you just let a little bit out and see how they respond. Those are incremental efforts, I think, that can maybe put a little bit of a pulse on letting people in and getting a little bit more vulnerable. Being willing and receptive to receive the help and the support. I can't stress enough. There were so many athletes and friends that said, can we bring you dinner? And it just so happened that we didn't need it. And it wasn't a turning down because, I can't stand your cooking or whatnot. But it was more so like, we have sufficient for our needs. Thanks so much. At this time, we'll let you know. And a lot of people say that. A lot of people say, hey, let me know if you need anything. Would you be a gem next time someone offers that and ask them for something? Because they're not saying that, for the thoughts and prayers comments. They're saying that because they're willing to serve. Even if it's something small, you got to remember what service does, you guys. Service allows us to step out of our own box and comfort zone and to give to an individual that might need. And it's better for the person serving than it is for the person receiving. So if you don't ask for help, the person that is volunteering to serve will never get that opportunity. You're taking away from their, future gratitude experience to serve. And so be receptive, accept help and support from everyone, who offers, if it's acceptable, recognizing that that's a sign of care, not a sign of weakness. And to reflect on the positive experiences, focus on the past interactions, and reinforce the beliefs that others genuinely care. And that's a weird thing when you get into addiction recovery, when you get on this team, is that people truly give a crap. They care about you. And that's, again, something that was new to me when I got married, and something that I think a lot of us might struggle with, is that people are saying this because they care. And then engage in those shared activities, meaning like spend that time together, be able to foster that connection of trust, be able to communicate and spend the communicative time discussing a little bit about the experience. And, if you're a person of few words, then use those few words and let the other ones, talk a little bit about their experiences and inquiries. And then I would definitely say practice patience, There's so many things. Right now, I'm at day 4 after this goofy little quick surgery, and I really want to run. There's no way I could run. I know this because I had a little whoopsie daisy going down the stairs today and pulled a little bit of a muscle a different way. And I'm like, ooh, yeah, can't quite do that yet. But patience, understanding that, there are limits you're going to have, but also in understanding that allowing others in the emotional process to help support you, it's going to take a little bit of time. It's going to take a little bit of effort. And so trust that process. So I just wanted to get on here quickly, drop this episode because me getting under the knife did mess up our last guest we were going to have. So we'll have them coming up on a future episode. Yesterday, because, there was so much going on in the house, we skipped. So we'll be, exporting this to the podcast, obviously today on Tuesday, a day late. But I wanted to just jump on here and just thank everyone who's reached out. It's been challenging. It's been an experience. It's been for my gain. I feel, about 90% better than I did, obviously, last week at this time. But I want to thank everybody for your willingness to reach out, to ask, and inquire a little bit about how we're doing, but more so to use it as a tool, because if I'm struggling with some of this stuff, I know you guys are too. Allow people in. It's truly what makes this team unique and great. So many of you guys have reached out, and again, I can't thank you enough. I think why worry about little old me? But it does feel good, which tells me that there's probably times out there, there's so many of us on this team. I can't do it alone, you guys. I need your help to have concerns and worry about athletes out there. But I'm hoping this message reaches you all with my sincere gratitude and thanks for all that you've done on Team Addict II Athlete and volunteer service in your communities, right down to, posting a get well message to me. Again, I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but I don't want to downplay anyone's willingness to spend just a small amount of time to inquire how Coach Blue's doing. Doing good. I want to thank you all. Share this podcast with anyone that that might struggle with accepting help. There's a reason why. And sometimes it just takes a little bit of time and effort and some consistency, and great things can happen. So I hope that this lands on your hearts. Again, I'm excited to get back under the training schedules. We've got some neat things coming up this summer. Marissa and I will be taking our daughter Savannah on a high school graduation trip out to Atlanta, Georgia, to see my brother and to tour the city by which she has a name, that is the same, Savannah, Georgia, Savannah Robinson. Congratulations, Savannah, on your high school graduation. That's happening tomorrow, which will be Wednesday. And you guys, there's so much going on in the world. Let's do our best to see our fellow athletes, friends, and families, to hear them, and to do our best to understand them. After all, it'll help turn their mess into their message.